Hello and good morning for me, and good morning for
Hello.
you.
Hello, everybody. Welcome
And
to this new episode. Sorry,
yeah,
Chris, go
uh,
on.
yeah, this new episode. If you like what we're doing and you're enjoying these videos, please do subscribe to the channel. Like this one. Listen to the end. I know it's sometimes quite long, but it's good for the old algorithms and all that. And tick the little bell to say that notify you when we do a new one. So, which is most days. Anyhow, today's title is "I am not who you think I am. You are," and
Dot,
it's
dot,
not
dot.
you are. It's not finished, but it actually is. You are what you think I am, which is a little difficult to get your mind round to start with, but basically, whatever you're thinking about the other person is basically who is your problem, or you are that essentially. So just take a little bit of care when you start complaining about somebody else, because what you're revealing is you essentially in your complaints, and yeah, this comes this the reason this topic exists is because I was pondering the fact that where how do we actually determine who we are? Now, this is an interesting question because if you ask someone, who are you? They'll generally say, well, I'm Chris Ogle, I'm a computer programmer, I'm this. Now, I didn't ask you what you did, and I didn't ask you your name. I asked you, who are you? And that's a very different question because. So I'm just trying to sort my neck out here.
Weird. Yeah,
My
so
collar. Yeah. So who are you is a very awkward question, and when we look back and we essentially study what it is that we claim to be, we find that every single thing we claim to be comes from what we're given by other people. So, you know, we might have this impression we're intelligent, and that comes from our parents. And like you're clever, you are. Yeah, you're more clever than your sister or your brother or whatever. And then you get this idea of illusion of grandeur because you're better than the other people. And then you go along and you do something, and you do something well, and like, oh, you're a little genius, you are, and all this, and then somebody else does something better, and you think, oh, hang on a minute. And I know this problem because I've had it, right? And then
I had
somebody
it
else
too.
and it's, I think everybody has it. Or you get told you're not as clever as somebody else, and then suddenly you're trying to prove that you are for the rest of your life until you realise, what am I doing here? Who's who, who gave them the right to determine whether I'm clever or not? Surely that is my responsibility to determine what I'm happy to be, whether it's this, that, or the other. And yet we don't. We are lazy and we accept that all the things that people say about us are valid, or we put them in this to be sorted pile, and we go round and we go, right, has this person got any I mean, I do this all the time. I like, if someone says to me, oh, you've done this, you should have done that. And it's like, okay, well, let me just evaluate the qualities of the person giving me this advice and see whether I actually believe they're in a better place to determine what I do or I am. And 100%, uh, I'm in a better place.
it's interesting though because you were focusing on your own truth. While lots of people, me including, and I was working with somebody yesterday, and she also said that she realized in our work yesterday that she had decided from a very young age to listen to the negative talk, to the people who were telling her how this is bad, this is not good, this you can't do this, you can't do that, while there were other people who were telling her other things that she could do, which were kind of love related. And she ignored those because she kind of thought that that's the safe way, the parents, the family, this is how it is, what they say. Well, she knew deep down that something's not quite right, but she kind of neglected that voice that was talking, like in your case, you were listening to it. And same with me. I quickly realized that I need to listen to my parents or I'll be in big trouble. So whatever they said I made sure I was.
Well,
Even though it was struggling and difficult and I didn't want to do it and it was pushing me to outside of my comfort zone big time in some of the things that I was labeled as the most competent and the most capable person. I just wanted to play, for God's sake.
yeah, I mean, I guess it took me till throughout my like youth and, well, I'm still young, by the way, or my teenage years, um, I accepted that I wasn't able to control my life exactly because I couldn't drive. All I had was a push bike or whatever, and basically there were limitations, and I accepted that there were limitations, and I needed to curry favor with those people that could deliver the things that I couldn't do, right? But as soon as, and I have to be really, really grateful for my parents because they never ever told us you've got to do this or you've got to do that. I mean, they were obviously, my dad often said, while you're living under my roof, you do as I say, and I understand that because like that was their environment and they created it and they didn't want this upstart causing a mess, right? So basically, I understood that.
That's some kind of a business venture.
However, what it did was it basically told me I wanted my own place because then I could do what the hell I liked.
So you were driven by the reward. I was driven by the punishment.
Okay,
Of
well,
avoiding pain.
well, I created that reward because basically I said, when I get my own place, I'll do as I like, right? Which was true because it came out of them saying, while you're under my house, you have to do as I say. And it's like some of those things weren't things I totally wanted to do. So that was an incentive to get out from under their shadow, as it were, and do my own thing. But because they'd been basically allowing us to kind of find ourselves and find what we wanted to do without any pressure. I mean, I've said this before, but my parents were totally uninterested. Now they were interested in me passing my exams, but they were never really interested in any of the detail. So, like, have you done your homework? Yep. That was the end of the conversation.
Oh, you were lucky.
Right.
I had to be showing it, and if I do something, my mum would know because the teacher post office worked really well because they're all in the same staff room, obviously. She was the teacher at the same school I was, so I made sure I was always on track with everything. Oh God.
But I used to say to my parents, you wouldn't understand it anyway, so what's the point of showing you? Like
I'm very cocky.
Yeah, which is basically it was like a bit of a cheeky kid who basically spoke a lot of truths. Like
and I was a dumb kid who was like, well, not dumb, but I was just a casual, normal kid who just wanted to make sure that she doesn't get the wrath of her parents on her head, and she was just getting along.
But by the same token, I never asked my pet, like, if I hadn't completed the homework, I was going to face the music the next day. I never asked for my parents' support. I basically went in and faced the music. Like I knew the consequences of my actions and I took responsibility for them. Like if I was going to get in trouble, it was going to be a bad day. Okay, so what? Next day won't be bad. So I think like in those formative years, you get to I mean, my dad said to me, why don't you stay in? Oh, I'd had the divorce and separated, and I'd gone back to my parents. Thankfully, they were happy to receive me, and basically, I was back in a single room, my old bedroom, after like this quick adventure that terminated, and rather than sitting there and being a bit bored, a bit disappointed by this, I thought, okay, well, what am I good at? What have I got? What have I, blah, 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 white sheet of paper stuff, and off I went again. And basically, my dad said, "Why you keep going out all the time?" I said, "Well, I mean, the first comment was, well, who am I going to meet sitting here watching the TV with you two?" Right, right. And then my dad said, like, why don't you do what I did? And it's like, Dad, and this is the important point. This is the point I was coming towards, is that my dad and my mum had a life that they were happy with, but it wasn't a life I wanted. So rather than try and recreate, and my mum and dad trying to sort of advise me to create the life that they had, which worked for them, fantastically, and we've all benefited as a result of that. But it wasn't my life. And I wanted my life, and my mum and dad were going for the safety option. It was what they did in those days, and I was going for a bit more of adventure. And whereas their life was a bit like this, up and down, mine was like ooh. But I like that. It was like a constant, and it's not changed. It's still the same. It's a bit of an adventure. I'm not frightened to try things and watch them fail, because I learn.
Yeah,
And
this is you are an embodiment of a growth mindset. If anybody doesn't know what and still don't understand what this thing growth mindset and fixed mindset is, you can look at us too. So Chris is an embodiment of growth mindset, and I'm an embodiment of somebody with a fixed mindset who's trying to get out of it.
yeah, and it all started from the parents, and basically questioning what people say about you. That's really kind of the nub of it, is that you have to know who you are. And I'm not saying we do, and I'm still at a loss of who I am, to be honest. You can put labels on people if whatever you want, but ultimately, who am I is still a consequence of all the things I've done and what people have fed back to me. And I've said, okay, all these things are in a little pile here. Right, that one's rubbish. Don't want that one. That one's rubbish. Don't want that one. Oh, hang on. Someone said something good here. It must be this. Great. That's in the box.
It's like shopping.
Yeah.
Oh, I like this. I'm going to put this in the basket.
Yeah. And then we start to believe what's in this box about ourselves. But actually, it's not true, is it? Because the people we considered wrong may have been right. Who knows? I mean, we just didn't like what they said. Right? So someone might call me arrogant because I'm kind of positive about things. It's not, like arrogant. That doesn't go in.
Yeah, don't like
Why?
it.
Because I don't believe that. I don't believe I'm
subscribe under the arrogant.
Yeah, maybe we've got a different definition of arrogant, but yours doesn't work for me. Whatever it is, but like, we have to accept that we've done this sorting and sifting, and we've picked up what we think's good. Now, in your case, it might be inhibitive stuff, like you put in the box stuff which keeps you back and not taking you forward. Because there's a risk attached to that. Oh, no, we can't have risk. That's out. That's not having that. Whereas my parents didn't start this process. I did, because I think they were the same. They were like, oh, that's acceptable. That is. My dad was probably a little bit different. He'd go off and do things he enjoyed. But maybe there was some systematic controls on him, like about what's right and what's not right, like moral codes, etc., which, I think basically he did what he thought or considered was fair and reasonable and right. But and they didn't try to impose that on us. They basically thought, well, they have to find what they like, and I shouldn't be imposing my life. So actually, whether it was by choice or whether it was just his way of understanding. I think he both my mum and my dad did a cracking job. They'd try and advise, and if we went off and did our own thing, we had to take responsibility for it,
Yeah.
which is exactly the right kind of of thing to be doing. Otis has scooted off on a huge adventure. Sold his house and got in a van, and they're going to go around doing this van thing. But well, I've never done that, so I don't feel I'm in a position to advise him, to be
Yeah.
honest. And I hope that's the right choice. He's going to probably do things, and I'm going to go, oh, that's a good idea. We'll probably do that ourselves. And we pick up stuff from those people because, and like he said yesterday, or the day before, I can't remember when. If you go off to Hungary and you do things in Hungary and we come over there and we lend a hand, we'll be blogging about it, and it might be that, like we're not, we end up, and this is not an excuse, by the way, we're not as good and we don't have such a big network because we're not as funky and as young and like stupid, if you like, or silly. And yet here they are. Oh, well, I wish I had funky parents like that, like it. And suddenly there's a whole new ball of wax coming out, not because of our introduction, but because it was a cause and effect of what they're doing. Who knows? I've no idea. But what I'm saying is, I'm not closed off to that idea.
It's the adventurous attitude that we seem to lose very young with the programming of society.
Yeah, that's your two. Why don't you act like an adult? Hang on a minute. Well, who said that's a rule?
Or somebody was out saying, "Oh, why don't you act your age?" I said, "Well, I've never been my age before. Well, how am I supposed to be acting? I don't know."
Well,
And
I
who
am.
said that this is? And who said this is the age, the behavior that I need to be displaying? If I am this age,
Well,
or go make sure you find a job because then you're gonna have a pension.
Well, you could surprise everyone and say I am acting my age because inside me, I'm still 21.
Well, even younger.
Yeah, but that's the age I'm acting.
I was talking to my son the other day. I said, "Well, your soul, your spirit doesn't age."
Yeah, exactly.
So
Well, you get
what
more
are you talking
experience.
about? Oh, mommy, you're getting old. I said, "No, I'm not."
So yeah, absolutely. So I think that acting your age, most times it's a negative thing that people accusing you, probably because they're frightened to do what you're doing. By the way, they're frightened to take those choices because people would say the same thing to them, and yet they see you're having fun and they're actually jealous of it. So they're like, so that comes out. Oh, act your age. What, am I supposed to be acting like an old man or something with some walking stick and one of those trolley baskets going shopping? Like, no thanks. I'd rather not be doing that. I'd rather be doing something way more enjoyable, like taking a plane off to Hungary and like taking a 2-hour bus ride, which might sound awful for some people, but do you know what? We enjoyed it anyway.
Yeah.
and then when we get to the place, we're busy beavering away doing things because we like it's fun. It's like it's like if I'm just saying, like if you went to Bulgaria or you went somewhere else and you're doing the same thing, ultimately you're doing something which you enjoy, and most people would say, "What the hell are you doing that for?" Like, well, they've already controlled themselves into a point where they don't do anything much. Like, what do you do in your life? Most people say, at least Chris isn't boring.
Yeah, at least it's never the same dull day.
There's never a day the same, is there? Because why? Because that's the life I want to lead. Never a dull day, never a day the same. Some are good, some aren't so good, but it doesn't matter, does it? It's just what it is. And, you're never too old to do anything. That's a mindset.
The spirit doesn't age. It's the ego that decides that it's.
Yeah, and how am I going to look in society? It's like, I couldn't give a monkeys, to be honest. Make up your own mind, and if you don't like it, then woo, bye.
I had another on the same topic yesterday. Something popped into my Facebook feed, and it was about understanding who we are dealing with. So in an interaction with another person. So the post went like this: if you want to know somebody very well, don't ask people about them, listen to that person talk about other people.
Mm.
And this comes back to our topic. You are not what I am, not what you think I am. You are what you think I am. So listening to people talk about other people will reveal who they are. I mean, not
Or
all, but them, the people who are talking.
or talking about you.
Yeah.
Like,
So
if people are levying a criticism, we talked about this before. If people are leveling a criticism to you, it's obviously a trigger. Why is it a trigger? Is it a trigger because they're frightened to do it? Is it a trigger because they're unhappy? Is it a trigger because of whatever it is? It's like what people say reveals more about them than what
yeah.
they say. It does. It always does. You can hear people and you can think, I mean, you don't want to put too much emphasis on this, by the way, because it's none of your business, really. I mean, if we bother ourselves, like I think the Zen thing here comes in again, and it's like, don't even think about the good and evil or the potential for good and evil in other people. It's none of your business. So someone's out there doing something, like, really, if we concern ourselves overly much with what they're doing, we're focusing on something we don't really have any control of.
We're
just
focusing outside of us because and then we are neglecting this
ourselves.
who is this?
Yeah, exactly.
The soul, the spirit who wants to experience the world. But
I mean, it's none of our business what other people are, really.
come on.
Right, we could get into hot water by saying it's none of our business, because there's loads of people out there that say, yeah, but the people who are doing bad things should be stopped from doing those bad things. Yeah, but they'll never be stopped because you say so. They'll be stopped because they appreciate that what they're doing isn't beneficial for large numbers of people, and probably it's not a good idea. But how are they going to get from doing what they're doing to not doing what they're doing? And it's by self-evaluation. It can't come any other way. And this is why this process, like people say, oh, I'd like to be peace all over the world. It can't be peace all over the world for the simple reason that this is hard work. This is really hard work. Like working on yourself. If you ask anybody, how difficult is it to work on yourself? How is it to reduce the ego to a non-offensive? How is it to learn how to live in harmony with everything about you, around you? How is it possible to not want money and not want possessions? How is it possible to not want more than the other person next door's got? How is it possible? It's hard.
Yeah, it is.
It's really hard, and that's why there can't be peace in the world, because you can't have peace and on one side of the coin and then peace on the other side of the coin, because then there wouldn't be two sides of the coin. There could be one. and there's always, like, and you can look around now, can't you? There's always two sides to everything, and more sides. There's million sides, but basically there's promotion of one side or another. And that's why we see this world in such a divisive state, because there's always two sides to everything. There's the people who really feel sorry for like what's happening in Ukraine, and they're really pro Ukraine, anti-Putin. There's people who are pro Putin, anti-Zelensky in Ukraine, and like they've both got a point. Like what I believe is that no one should be dying over it.
Yeah.
And yet there are thousands and thousands of people dying, and peace is the answer. But how do you get peace when you've got egos all over the place? It's really hard work.
It's egos at top of states.
And up till now,
in control of armies and weapons.
Yeah, exactly. The easiest solution, right, is to kill someone, because then you haven't got to deal with them anymore. And that's the sad fact, isn't it? Is that to try and get someone to go through this unbelievable metamorphosis to become a different person, but one of like serenity and happiness, if you like, and peace, is such a hard road. It's just not this life for them. Maybe it's next one or the one after, or maybe 1,000 lives down the road.
They need to come this,
but like
somehow
it's almost easier to just say, okay, we'll end this one and we'll go on with the next one, because there's no chance. And yet I feel bad saying it, but like, look around you. How easy is it for people to change? It's just tough. It's a tough gig.
It's the
It's
toughest thing. And it's not just because they want to change and it's hard enough to change yourself, but then you have all the resistance of everybody around them that is stopping them as well. And it takes it takes an extremely big amount of determination and commitment to yourself to do
But
anything.
and that in itself is a problem, because people see this working on yourself as lazy, self-centered, selfish, not thinking of other people. Why are you spending all your time doing that and not doing things to help others? Like, this is the kind of amount of stuff that, and the reason I can say this stuff really fluently is because I've suffered from it.
Yeah, no, me too.
and there's no simple answer, but this thing about who are you, like, and just understanding that everything that people have said about you is an illusion. It's just somebody's opinion. Whether it's objective or subjective is irrelevant. It's irrelevant. The important thing is for you to get to the bottom of it, and that is maybe a 10-20 year task. It's not easy, and yet I challenge.
And the one thing, the first step that anybody can do is, when you start thinking about pointing a finger at someone and saying, you are ... you fill the blank, you are such and such person, is to stop and to think, oh, okay, so I am judging that person. That means somewhere deep inside, I've got this same thing that I'm judging him for. And address that and see where it's coming from. And that's how we grow. That's why you say it's 20 years time. It's long. It's a long period, because it's all about self-awareness, and it's back to, because when you were a child, you probably had all of this awareness, but it was educated out of us. And
we just did what we wanted, didn't we, without fearing the consequences. I mean, like that. Yeah, like, I must be rubbish at this, because not 20 years, 35 years I've been doing this.
Well, you're doing great. Well, who am I to say?
Right, well, that's probably done this to death.
Yeah, we've done that one well. Yeah. So
hoping
who are you guys? Subscribe to the channel for the start.
But don't say I'm Chris Over, or whatever your name is, and I'm this and I'm that, because all you're doing is describing some results.
A human, what was it? A straw man. Go check straw man.
Right, don't forget to subscribe, take note of all that, and we'll see you on another one.